start of it in old New
Okay, yeah. I think, it didn't just happen in a vacuum. I was prepared for it unknowingly, probably through a lot of my youth experience from when I was a child. My mom and dad were U.S. Foreign Service, so I grew up as an American embassy brat, traveling all over the world, living in different countries. You would be assigned to a country for 2 years, and then you would return back home here to the States. You'd be around for, during the summer, so maybe like for 3 months, sometimes for a year, and then you would go back overseas to another country. And so when I'm 62 now, but when I first started going overseas, it was at the age of 3 in 1961, and every other 2 years from that point until I was about 13 or so. So my formative years,
Mm-hmm.
And overseas there in the 1960s, I would do kindergarten, I would do elementary school, not every grade, but because some grades I'd be back here for every 2 years. But my classes over there, this is a very important factor. My classes over there were filled with other embassy kids from around the world. So like some of my classmates were Nigerian, Japanese, French, German, Swedish, you name it. If those countries had an embassy there, all of their kids went to the same school. So I was surrounded by what we would call diversity or multiculturalism. The term multiculturalism didn't even exist back then. It was unheard of. So then when I would come back home, back to the US, my own country, I would either be in Black schools or Black and white schools, meaning the still segregated or the newly integrated. And the ones that were newly integrated back then were just Black and white kids. We didn't have the diversity that I had overseas. In this country, we didn't have a lot of Hispanic people or a lot of Asians, things like that. So, maybe just, one or two occasionally, but it was just Black kids and white kids. So while I was already prepared for multiculturalism, having come from that, I was not prepared for separation and racism. So I really had no concept of it. And I got a rude awakening when I was participating at that age. One of the times we came home was 1968, and I was 10 years old. And I was in an all-white school except for another little Black girl in second grade and myself in fourth grade. So the only time I saw her was like at recess or lunchtime. And all of my classmates, all of my friends were white. And some of my guy friends were members of the Cub Scouts. And they invited me to join. And I joined, had a good scout group, a good den mother, had a lot of fun. And we were in Belmont, Massachusetts at that time, which is a suburb of Boston and right next door to Lexington and Concord. And so there was a parade from Lexington to Concord one day to commemorate the ride of Paul Revere. And the streets were blocked off, the sidewalks were lined with nothing but white people. And the Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, Brownies, Girl Scouts, 4-H Club, and different organizations were marching in this parade. And I was the only Black participant as far as I could see. And anyway, we're marching and everybody's cheering us and waving and yelling, the British are coming, the British are coming. And then somewhere down the parade route, just a small group of people, maybe 4 or 5, off to my right, began throwing things, and I was getting hit with soda pop cans and small pebbles from the street and things like that. And because I had no experience with this ever before, my natural assumption was, those people over there, they don't like the Scouts. I thought the Scouts were under attack. It never occurred to me that I was under attack because I hadn't done anything. I'm just marching. Right. Well, when my den mother and my cub master and troop leader all came running, and they all were white, and they surrounded me and huddled over me to protect me from these projectiles, I looked around and nobody else was getting this treatment. So I'm like, well, why are they doing this to me? I didn't do anything to them. I didn't say anything. Why are they doing this? I mean, everybody else is waving, except for these people throwing stuff. And all they kept doing was going, shh, move along, Daryl, hurry up, move along, it'll be okay. So they never answered the question. So eventually, we got out of that, danger, and there were no more problems. But when I got home, I'm all scraped up and stuff, and my parents are asking me, they weren't there. They were asking me, how did I fall down and get all scraped up? I think I was playing some game and tripped and fell or something. I told them, I didn't fall down. I told them exactly what had happened. And for the first time in my life, my mom and dad sat me down and they explained to me what racism was. And believe it or not, at the age of 10, I had never heard the word racism. And I had no clue whatsoever what they were talking about, because I'd been around people from all over the world, man. This didn't make sense to me. And the people who were doing this did not look any different to me than my white friends from Germany or France or England or Australia or wherever, or my little friends from the embassy, or for that matter, my white friends right there in Belmont who treated me perfectly, So I didn't quite understand how they could figure that because of the color of my skin, that somebody would hurt me. And when they were telling me this, I'm like, no, that's not possible, because my 10-year-old brain could not wrap itself around that concept, especially when I'd been around white people from all over the world. It made no sense, and I couldn't grasp that concept. So I didn't believe my parents. Well, shortly thereafter, a month and a half, maybe just a little bit more than a month and a half, Martin Luther King was assassinated that same year, 1968, on April the 4th. And I remember it very clearly. Nearby Boston burned to the ground. Every major city, my hometown, Chicago, right here where I am now, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Baltimore, Detroit, Los Angeles, Nashville, they all burned to the ground like we're seeing today as a result of years of George Floyd's. All right. So I then realized that this new word that I had learned, racism, it does exist. So I accept that. But what I didn't know was why. Why are people racist? People are not born that way, so where does it come from? And so I formed a question at that age, which was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? It's just an innocent question. And I've been looking for the answer to that question now for 52 years. And nobody seemed to be able to answer it. I have tons of books that I started buying when I was a teenager and buy to this day on Black supremacy, on white supremacy, on the Ku Klux Klan, the neo-Nazis, the Nazis in Germany, anti-Semitism, you name it. I got the books and I read them all. They all talk about this phenomenon called racism, but they don't explain why. And so I had a meeting, a by chance meeting, with a Klan member. One time I was playing in a bar. I have my degree in music. I'm a professional musician. So I graduated from college with my degree in music and started playing full time, which I still do today, except on lockdown, you don't do that. So all my gigs are gone for now. But anyway, I joined a country band, and I was the only Black guy in the band, and consequently, the only Black guy usually wherever we played. And so this one place we were playing in Frederick, Maryland, called the Silver Dollar Lounge, and it was an all-white bar for all practical purposes, not meaning that Black people could not go in. Yeah, just that they chose not to go in because they weren't welcome. And when you're not welcome somewhere and alcohol is being served, it's not a good combination.
Not a good combination.
No. Especially when you're outnumbered, right? So anyway, there you go. I'm there. I'm in the joint, man. And the band had played there before. They were an established country band, and I'd never been there before. My first time there. So we played. Supposed to do 3 sets. After the first set, we took a break, and I'm going to go sit down at the band table with my bandmates. And somebody came behind me and put their arm around my shoulder. And I didn't know anybody in there, right? So who's this person touching me? I turn around and look. It's this guy, 15 or so years older than me. And he says how much he enjoyed the music and pointed at the stage and said he'd seen the band before, but he'd never seen me. Where did I come from? And I explained to him, yeah, you probably did see the band. They played here before, but I've never played here. It's my first time. He shook my hand and said how much he enjoyed my piano playing and that he had never seen a Black guy play piano like Jerry Lee Lewis. And this was not offensive to me, but it was a point of curiosity because this guy was older than me. So he was closer to Jerry Lee Lewis's heyday than I was. And I couldn't imagine that he didn't know the Black origin of Jerry Lee Lewis's style of piano playing. And I quickly explained it to him. Oh, no. Jerry Lee didn't learn anything from Black people. Jerry Lee invented that. I ain't never seen no Black man play like that except for you. So I'm thinking, okay, dude never saw Little Richard, never saw Fats Domino, But he was fascinated with me, even after I told him that I knew Jerry Lee, and Jerry Lee had told me where he learned how to play. The guy still didn't believe it. But he was fascinated enough with me that he wanted to bring me back to his table and buy me a drink. Now, so I don't drink alcohol, but I had a glass of cranberry juice. He paid the waitress. He took his glass and he clinked my glass and cheered me. And then he says, this is the first time I ever sat down and had a drink with a Black man. And now I'm really baffled. Where has this guy been? What planet? Because I in my lifetime at that point, I'd sat down with thousands of white people or any kind of race of people and had a beverage, a meal, a conversation. And this guy has never done that. So I innocently asked him, I said, why? And see, I didn't really have a concept that a lot of people had not done what I had done before. To me, it was just the norm. And so anyway, he didn't answer me at first. He stared at the table. I asked him again, and his buddy elbowed him and said, tell him. And I said, tell me. And he just looked at me just as plain as day, and he said, I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan. And I couldn't help it. I just burst out laughing because I thought he was making a joke, and I'm trying to justify him saying that. Right. And I think, okay, he thought I was joking him about Jerry Lee Lewis, so he's going to joke me about the KKK. So I'm laughing, going off the joke. He goes inside his pocket, pulls out his wallet, flips through, and hands me his membership card. Now, I know a lot about the Klan. I know a whole lot about the Klan. And so I took the card, look at it.
You were well versed in the Klan.
Oh, extremely. Yeah. I mean, I could even run the Klan. I'm serious. I could run that whole organization,
This was before, anyway, prior to meeting him?
Yeah. I mean, I'd read vast books on the Klan, So I took the card and I looked at it and I'm like, ooh, this is for real. I recognized the insignia, which is a red circle with a white cross and a red blood drop in the center of the cross. And I stopped laughing. This thing was for real. Why am I sitting here with a Klansman? So I gave him back his card, but he was very, very friendly. And we talked about the Klan and different things. And he wanted me to call him whenever I was to return to this bar with this band, because he wanted to bring his friends, meaning Klansmen and Klanswomen, to see me play piano like Jerry Lee Lewis. He just found that fascinating, or novelty or something. Anyway, I told him I'd call him. He gave me his phone number, and I would call him every 6 weeks when we were on a rotation with other bands to come back and play for the weekend. I'd call him on a Wednesday or Thursday and say, hey man, we're down at the Silver Dollar this weekend, come on out. He'd come both nights, Friday and Saturday. And he'd bring his buddies with him, and they would watch me play. They'd get out on the dance floor and dance. And then on the break, I'd make my way over to his table, say hello. Some of them would hang there because, they were curious about me and wanted to meet me. So, they'd meet me, but others would see me coming from the stage towards their table, and they would get up and just quickly move across the room somewhere else. So it was obvious, they wanted nothing to do with me other than just to look at me. It's like, look, but don't touch. All I wanted to do was just observe me, which is fine. I didn't care if, you don't want to meet me, I don't need to meet you. So, they scurried off. And the others would hang around and, ask me questions and meet me, and, we'd laugh and joke and carry on. So at the end of that year, I quit that band and I went back to playing rock and roll and blues and whatever else was going on. And then a long while later, it dawned on me, oh man, the answer to the question that had been plaguing me since the age of 10, how can you hate me when you don't even know me, fell right into my lap, and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah, that's
because, yeah, It was serendipity, and I didn't recognize it. I mean, who better to ask that question of than someone who would go so far as to join an organization that has a whole history and premise of hating people who don't look like them and who do not believe as they believe. That was my answer. So I hadn't seen this dude in a long time. I figured, you know what? I'm going to get a hold of that guy. I'm going to get him to hook me up with the Klan leader for the state of Maryland, which I live in currently. And I'm going to interview that guy. I'm going to go up north, down south, Midwest, West, and interview different Klan leaders and members from different Klan groups. And I'm going to write a book, because all of my books have been written by white authors. Obviously, they had better access to KKK people without fear of ramifications.
Probably.
Yeah. So there had been 2 books written by Black authors, one in the 1930s and one in the 1940s, that talked about the Klan, but they talked about how each of them escaped a lynching. And I wanted to sit down with these people, my would-be lynchers, and ask them face to face, why would you lynch me? Why would you hate me? That kind of thing. So mine would be the first book written like that by a Black author. So skipping ahead, the guy, I found his phone number after all that time. I called, and turns out the phone was disconnected. So I had to track him down. He had moved, and he had a phone number. I mean, he didn't have a phone number. He had an address. It took me 2 weeks to find it. And I went to his place unannounced because I had no way of reaching him. I just knocked on his door one evening of this apartment building, and he opens the door, and he goes, "Daryl, what are you doing here?" And he steps out in the hallway. He looked up and down the hallway to see if I brought anybody with me. And when he stepped out of his apartment, I stepped in. So he turned around, he came back in. He goes, "Man, what are you doing, man? Are you still playing? What's going on?" I said, yeah, I'm still playing, but listen, we need to talk about the Klan. So long story short, I wanted him to hook me up with the Klan leader, and he wouldn't do it. He was fearful for his safety and for mine. Now, in the interim, he had since left the Klan. Turns out he had gotten kicked out. He told me he had quit, but he'd gotten kicked out. I found out later on. And
probably a good thing to get kicked out of that type of organization.
Well, I tell you, it was pretty funny, the actual story. I'll get to that in a second. Remind me if I forget. But yeah, so anyway, he didn't want to do it because he was fearful for his safety and for mine. And I begged and pleaded with him to give me the Klan leader his address and phone number. He didn't want to do that either. It took me 20 minutes of begging and pleading. He finally gave it to me with the condition that I not tell the Klan leader where I got his information. I said, okay. So he warned me. The Klan leader's name was Roger Kelly. And he said, "Daryl, do not go to Roger Kelly's house. He will kill you." And I said, well, that's the whole purpose. That's what I want to find out. Why does this man hate people so much that he would kill me? All he sees is this, color of my skin. Doesn't make any sense.
Right.
He said, just don't do it. He says, if you go, take people with you, whatever, don't go to his house, try to meet him in a public place. And he gave me the name of this public place where Mr. Kelly would hang out. And I did go there, but he had been there, but he wasn't there that particular evening. So anyway, I had my secretary phone Mr. Kelly, and my secretary is white. And the only reason I mention it, because it doesn't matter to me what color somebody is because it plays a good role in my story. Mm-hmm. I'm the one who had this guy's phone number. I could have called him myself, but I did not want to call him because I figured, if he picked up in my voice that I'm Black, he might say, I'm not talking to you, click. And then my whole project would have, terminated before it ever got started. So I figured, well, if my secretary calls him, he could detect in her voice, this is a white woman on the end of this phone. And he would not automatically think that she's working for a Black man, especially a Black man who's writing a book on the Ku Klux Klan, because they didn't exist at that time.
You didn't think of disguising your voice and saying "Hi, how are you?"
Nah, when I was a kid and used to make prank phone calls to friends of mine, I tried that and they always got my voice, no matter how much I disguised it. And now, now I'm like a bass or baritone, but back then I was a tenor, and yeah, I was. But no, they always caught on. Anyway, so that ended my my prank call career. But I had her call, and I told her, listen, do not tell Mr. Kelly that I'm Black unless he asks. If he asks, don't lie to him, but don't tell him and don't allude to it. And the reason I wanted that to happen was because I didn't want him to turn me down. And then if he agreed to come, he could see that I'm Black, and he could, make up his mind right then and there. Do I talk to this guy? Do I walk away? Or do I beat him up? Or, whatever his choice was, he could make that decision once he saw me in the flesh. So she understood, and she called him, and he didn't ask what color I was, and he agreed. So we had first set it up. He invited us over to his home, and something had come up for me on that day that was already booked. So when I had her call and reschedule, I said, listen, let's put it in a neutral territory. Let's meet at that motel above the Silver Dollar Lounge. I said, okay. So she called him back, and we agreed to meet at 5:15 on a Sunday afternoon at the at the motel above the Silver Dollar Lounge, which is not very far, from where this guy lived. And so Mary, her name, and I got there like several hours early, because oftentimes, when they bring one of their leaders, they send scouts out in advance to scout it out, make sure everything is cool before they bring their boss in. So okay. I didn't, just like the president or somebody, the Secret Service goes out and checks the place. Anyway, I didn't want word to get back, that they're bringing him to meet some Black guy. So I didn't want to be checking into the motel, and have some scouts sitting in the lobby checking things out. So we got there several hours early. I sent her in to get the room, and then I would go across the parking lot to the restaurant and call and get the room number from her. Then I would just make my way around and up the stairs to the room. So that all worked. And I gave her some money and sent her down the hallway, and she purchased some soda pop out of the machine, put it in the ice bucket, filled it with ice to get it all cold, so I could be hospitable. I didn't know what this man was going to do, but if he came in my room, I'm going to be cordial, just like I would with you or anybody else, and offer him a cold soda. So she got it set, and we're just, we're there early, and so it's just sitting there on the dresser, keeping cold, and she and I just sitting around talking, killing time until it's time for him to come. Well, right on time. Now let me just back up. The room that we were in, we didn't design it this way. It's just the way it is. If you're standing in the hallway at the door to the room, and the door is open, you cannot see who's in the room, because as soon as you look in, there's a bathroom to your left, and then you have to go around this corner to your right, and that's where the room is. So okay. We, you have to come halfway in the room and turn the corner, and then you see who's there. And so anyway, I took the lamp table and put it over in the farthest obscure corner of the room, and put a chair on one side for me, a chair on this side for Mr. Kelly. Took the lamp off, and I put a cassette recorder in the middle of the table, all hoping that if he came in, he would allow me to record the conversation. And I had this black canvas bag beside my chair, which had blank cassettes and a copy of the Bible, because the Klan claims to be a Christian organization, and they claim that the Bible preaches racial separation. So they're following the Bible when they practice racial separation. So now, I'm a Christian. I've never read that in the Bible, so I wanted to find out exactly, what did I miss? And so I had my Bible ready, so I could pull it out and say, here, Mr. Kelly, please show me chapter and verse where it says that Blacks and whites must be separate. So I'm all prepared, right? Right on time at 5:15, knock, knock, knock on the door. And I stay seated, and Mary hops up and runs around the corner, opens the door, and in walks this bodyguard. And he's dressed in military camouflage with the Ku Klux Klan patch, that red circle thing over here. Over here were the initials KKK, and embroidered on his beret, his cap, it said Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. And on his hip, in a holster, he had a semi-automatic handgun. So he comes in, and Roger Kelly is walking right behind him in a dark blue suit and tie. And the bodyguard turns the corner and sees me and just freezes in place. Well, Mr. Kelly was so close behind him, he couldn't see around him and didn't realize, that his bodyguard had stopped. So he like knocked into his back and knocked him forward. So now they both are stumbling around trying to, regain their balance. And they're like looking all around the room like, something's not right here. And I'm just sitting at my table, looking at them. And I'm reading their faces. And I could tell what they were thinking. They were thinking, did the desk clerk give us the wrong room number? Or did we misunderstand what he said? Or is this an ambush? I saw all these thoughts coming out of their face from their body expressions. And so I stood up and I went like this to display my hands, that I had nothing in my hands. And I walked forward, I put my right hand out, and I said, "Hi, Mr. Kelly, I'm Daryl Davis." And he shook my hand. He shook my hand. And so did the bodyguard. So far, so good. I said, "Come on in, gentlemen, come on in. Please, have a seat." Well, Mr. Kelly sat down, and the bodyguard stood at attention to his right. And before I could sit down, he asked me if I had any identification. Mr. Kelly did. I said, "Sure." And I produced my driver's license, handed it to him. And he's like reading it. He said, "Oh, you live on such and such street in Silver Spring." Now I'm standing there a little concerned. Like, why is this man reading my address? Is he going to come to my house and burn a cross? I mean, what's up? All he has to do is look at my name, look at my picture, look at me, make sure that's me, and give me back my license. And here he is, scrutinizing my address. So I didn't want to let him know that I was a little unnerved by that, but I want to let him know, don't think about intimidating me. And so I said, "Yes, Mr. Kelly, that is where I live. And you live at," and I named his house number and his street.
Nice.
That way I was leveling the playing field. I didn't say it, but I was implying, if you come visit me, I'm going to come visit you. So we're going to confine all the visiting today to this motel room. So he smiled, he nodded his head like he understood. But that day, it was me being presumptuous. I really had no reason to fear him, coming to my house uninvited. It so happened, and I didn't find this out until many months later, that one of his members lived right down the road here, in 2 neighborhoods over. And so Mr. Kelly would have to come to go visit that guy. He'd have to hit my street and go down my street and enter this other neighborhood. So I had no way of knowing that particular day.
It was just relating your plot to.
Yeah, it was just pure coincidence. And so I found that out, many months later. Well, anyway, we got on with this interview. And within 5-10 minutes of once starting the interview, I'm asking, I'm trying to find out, how can you hate somebody? You don't even know them. Well, blacks are prone to crime. We're criminals. And he says, it's evidenced by the number of black people in prison compared to the number of white people. Well, I mean, that is a half truth. There are more blacks in prison than white people, but he's not taking into consideration the inequity of the judicial system, or the fact that a lot of the black people cannot afford Johnny Cochran, or one of these, hotshot lawyers. So, whether they're innocent or guilty, there they are, right? So, I'm sitting there listening, and then he tells me that that black people, most of them are on welfare. We don't want to work. We're lazy. We prefer to scam the government welfare system. And the kicker, he said that black people are born with a smaller brain than white people. Yeah, and the smaller brain, the larger the brain, the more room for intelligence, and the IQ goes up. The smaller the brain, the lower the IQ, because there's not enough room for intelligence. So, I'm like, where's this science coming from? I've never heard this.
It's the most primitive.
Yeah, exactly. Fred Flintstone stuff. So, I'm listening to this, and he's saying, look, if you look at the SATs, it's your people who are failing the SAT scores, and he's right. But his people are not the smartest people in the country either. The Chinese people are the ones who score the highest. Exactly. The Asians score a lot higher than anybody in this country. All right. Now, it has nothing to do with their brain size. It has to do with their study and their work ethic. You know, they go to school to
family
learn.
systems, cultures.
Exactly. Precisely. So, you know, what he does is he takes things, you know, that are half truths and twists them to fit his narrative. All right.
Perfectly said.
So now when I'm sitting there 2 feet away from him on the other side of this little small motel room table, and he's telling me all this is, you know, that my brain size is small, I'm a criminal, I'm lazy, on welfare. And is what he's saying offensive? Yes, it is offensive. But was I offended by it? No, absolutely not. And that's what people don't understand. But you will when I explain to you. I know who I am. I have never been on welfare. I don't have a criminal record. I've never measured my brain, but I'm sure it's the same size as his or anybody else's. So why would I be offended by a lie? What he's telling is a lie. It's not a truth. Why would I let an untruth offend me? I know who I am. He doesn't know who I am, so he can believe whatever he wants to believe. I shouldn't be offended by it if it's not true. If my parents were telling me that, that might have a little more credibility. But all he sees is this, and he's going to make these claims. Why should I be offended? But see, people, when they deal with somebody like that, they get all offended and they want to get in your face and reach across the table and smack you, and you know, and then the fight is on. And that's what they're accustomed to. They're accustomed to that kind of thing, that pushback. So he was thrown off his game, you know, when I did not push back. And so he didn't know what to do. And so I said, look, man, you know, I told him just what I told you. I don't have a record. I've never been on welfare, never measured my brain size. So he changed the subject and we went on. And, you know, we found some things of agreement, some things of disagreement. But every time he would mention, it says in the Bible, Mr. Davis, I'd reach down and pull out my Bible. Or my cassette ran out of tape. I'd reach down and get a fresh tape to change it. And every time I'd reach down, the bodyguard would reach up to his hip and you know, put his hand on the handle of the gun. You know, he never pulled it out, but he put his hand there. And I completely understood, you know, what he was doing. It's his job to protect his boss. And he has no clue what's in my bag. So, you know, he was doing his job. I realized that. And I wasn't, you know, concerned about that. But about just over an hour into this interview, there was a very fast, quick, short noise, like a that was it. And it happened so fast and randomly while we were talking that my ear could not discern what it was. And I just flew up out of my chair and hit the table. I was getting ready to dive across that table and attack them because I knew that he had made the noise. I didn't make it, so therefore he had to have made it, Mr. Kelly. And because it happened so fast and only lasted just a split second, my ear could not figure out what it was. So naturally, I presumed it to be an ominous, threatening noise. After all, you got to consider the environment. I'm a black guy. He's the head of the Klan, all right, for the state. And that's not a good combination either.
No.
And then the other Klansman, the former one, had told me, Daryl, don't fool with Roger Kelly. He'll kill you. So I got all this going through my head. And then, you know, and then some weird noise happens, you know, that I can't explain. You know, something's wrong. Just like, you know, they were bewildered, you know, when they walked in the room and saw a black guy and they were expecting a white guy. So, you know, I had all this going through my head too. And I had gone into what, you know, we would call survival mode. You know, when you fear for your life, you go into survival mode. And in survival mode, you can only do one of four things. Some people, they just faint. You just pass out because the fear is so great that their brain cannot process it and it shuts down and they fall on the ground and they're out cold. Other people, they began constricting and they curl into a little ball and you can be punching them, hitting them, and they won't even be trying to deflect your blows. That's called paralysis by fear. Their muscles contract and they can't move. It's like somebody in a fight and they ball into a fetal position They don't even try to fight back. That's paralysis by fear. I don't do that either. The third thing people will do, is to run away. And believe it or not, that is the best option. As quickly as you can, separate yourself from whatever is giving you fear, causing you to be afraid. Remove yourself from that. And that's what I would have done. But that was not an option in a motel room, because you cannot outrun a bullet in a motel room. I was not armed. The only person that I knew for sure who was armed was the bodyguard. I could see his weapon on his hip. And I did not know if Mr. Kelly had a weapon up under his suit jacket or not. And my secretary did not have a weapon. So the fourth option is to do a preemptive strike. Get them before they get you. And that's what I was on my way to do. I was going to grab Mr. Kelly, grab the bodyguard, slam them down to the ground, take away the bodyguard's gun to neutralize, any danger. And when I hit the table, I was looking right into Mr. Kelly's eyes. And I didn't say a word, he didn't say a word, but I knew that he could read my eyes, because my eyes were shouting at him, and they were saying, "What did you just do?" I could read his eyes that were fixated on mine. His eyes were saying to me, "What did you just do?" And the bodyguard had his hand back on his gun again, looking at both of us like, "What did either one of you all just do?" And Mary was sitting to my left on top of the dresser. She realized what had happened, and she began explaining it to us when it happened again. The ice in the ice bucket next to her had begun melting, because it had been sitting there for a while, right? And the cans of soda shifted and went right down the soda, right? Right down the ice. And so we all burst out laughing, all of us. Here we are, enemies, the head of the Klan, a black guy, sitting at a table in a motel room, agreeing, disagreeing. But we had this tense moment where we both were ready to do something to one another. And now we're laughing together at how ignorant we were. And I cannot say this was a learning moment. That would come later, but it was definitely a teaching moment. And the lesson taught is that all because some foreign entity of which we were ignorant, that being the bucket of ice cans of soda, had entered into our little comfort zone that we'd built with each other via the noise that it made, we became fearful and accusatory of each other because we did not understand what that noise was. So the lesson taught is ignorance breeds fear. If we do not contain that, it will escalate, and the fear will breed hatred, because we hate those things that scare us. If we don't keep that hatred in check, the hatred in turn will breed anger, because we're angry about something that scared us. If we don't contain that anger will breed destruction. We want to destroy something. When we're mad, we want to, do something, and we want to destroy something. So ignorance breeds fear, fear breeds hatred, and essentially hatred breeds destruction through anger. Now, we saw the whole chain almost unravel to completion. Completion would have been that last component. If the Nighthawk, the bodyguard, they call them Nighthawks in the Klan, the bodyguard had drawn his weapon and shot somebody, namely me or my secretary in pursuit of doing his job, or had I pounced across the table and hurt one of them doing my job, which is to protect myself and my secretary. So it stopped us short of that. But everybody in this country 3 years ago saw that whole chain unravel to completion on August 12th, 2017 in Charlottesville, Virginia, where there was a lot of ignorance, a lot of fear, a lot of hatred. And what did it culminate in? It culminated in destruction when a white supremacist got inside his car and tried to mow down as many counter-protesters as he could. He succeeded in injuring 20 and murdering one young lady named Heather Heyer. That was the destruction. So if you want to address this problem of racism, Personally, I think we're doing it backwards. Normally, what you do is you change what's going on at the top, because whatever precedent, whatever policy is set at the top, it trickles down to the people down below. So, you know, if you manage a McDonald's, or you're the chief of a police department, or you're the head of IBM or whatever, you know, whatever goes on at the top is going to trickle down to the people below you. And, you know, if you're not setting the example that you want out of your employees, then it's because something's wrong with you at the top.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's normal in those kinds of situations. But in this situation, it's just the opposite. If you want to fix it, don't worry. Don't start at the top with the, you know, you got ignorance, fear, hatred, anger, destruction. Don't start up here and trickle down. Don't address the destruction. That's not coming back. Once something is destroyed, it's gone. It's like George Floyd's life. It's gone. He's not coming back. All right. Next level down is the anger. That's a symptom. Don't worry about the anger. Next level down is the hatred. Don't worry about the hatred. That's not going to fix anything. Don't worry about the fear. That's not going to fix anything either. The root cause is the ignorance. All right. So we got to trickle upwards. If you cure what's on the bottom, it won't metastasize to those other emotions: fear, power, ignorance, hatred, all that kind of stuff. All right. You fix the ignorance. Ignorance means unaware, you don't know.
Right.
So now if you've cured the ignorance, then there's nothing to fear. If there's nothing to fear, there's nothing to hate. If there's something to hate, there's something to be angry about. If there's something to be angry about, there's nothing to destroy. So there is a cure for ignorance. That cure is called education and exposure. You provide that, education and exposure, you have cured that ignorance, unless the person is just plain stupid and, you know, and doesn't use that education. And we have plenty of stupid people. But a lot of us are ignorant as to something, and we can learn. If we can learn, then we can move forward. So we need to focus on the bottom, the root cause. It's like having cancer in your bone. You can't put a topical cream up here and cure the cancer, you know, or a Band-Aid. You got to drill down to that bone and put that radiation or that chemo in there. And that's how you get rid of that cancer. So we work from the bottom up.
You know what I was thinking when you were talking about the first Klan member you met that said he never seen a black guy play piano like that. He went up to you. He had, even though he was a Klan member, he still had curiousness and openness or whatever. It almost felt like there was something inside him that knew there might have been some type of ignorance, and so he opened himself up to that conversation. But maybe because he's been surrounded by this specific ideology for so long, he never really saw that door be open until you came along.
Possibly, but also I don't want to discount the role that music plays and has played in my life and has played on other people. You know, I can tell you without a doubt, because I can tell you stories about that place, even stories with me in that place, the Silver Dollar Lounge. Had I just walked in there for the first time, just to, you know, not as a musician, just as somebody coming by there to go hear some music and maybe dance or whatever, I would have had to fight my way out. I will guarantee you that. But I came there as a musician. Even though Black people are not necessarily welcome, I'm on stage entertaining people, playing songs, you know, that they like. Johnny Cash, George Jones, Willie Nelson, Hank Williams, all this stuff. I'm in a country band.
Right.
And so they're enjoying what I'm playing. And they're fascinated because I was a one-off for them. You know, they're used to seeing white people perform that. And the band was white, except for me. And here I am playing it just as well as anybody else. So what was funny was people would always ask me if I would play some Charlie Pride song. And because, you know, they always associated black people who play country, Charlie Pride. He was one of the biggest black country stars. And I would not play those songs. I would not sing them, even though I could. I would, if somebody in the band wanted to do one, sure, I'd play piano on it. But I would not sing it intentionally because I didn't want them to think, oh, well, he's black, so he must do a Charlie Pride song. Just like, if you see some black musician, you want him to rap, something like you associate something with, that black thing. So I would play songs that were made popular by white people just to throw them off. So anyway.
And I know you're short on time.
Okay.
But,
I'm fine if you are.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, you talk about music. Let me just give you an example of something. So let's say that I have a night off, Saturday night, whatever, not working, don't have a gig. But so I want to go out and dance and hear some music. So I'm going to go down to this place down the street, this club or whatever. Sometimes they have a band, sometimes they have a DJ, but either way, they got music and they got a dance floor. So I go, and the dance floor is packed, and there's some song that's playing either by the band or the DJ, and I like it. I want to dance to it. So first thing I do is, I scan the room, and I see if I see a single lady who's by herself, so I don't take somebody else's woman or whatever. And there's some lady sitting at the bar. Yeah, so some lady sitting at the bar, and she's patting her hand on the bar in beat to the music. So obviously she likes the song too. I don't know her. I'm gonna walk over to her and I'll say, hey, you wanna dance? She goes, yeah. So she hops off the bar. So we go out onto the dance floor and we're dancing together. I don't even know this woman, right? If it's a slow song, we're like this. And we're dancing around the floor, turning around, etc. If it's a fast song, we're apart, we're shaking around, right? At the end of the song, I'm going to escort her back to her bar stool, like a gentleman. And I'm going to say, hey, my name's Daryl Davis, blah, blah, blah. She says her name is Sally Smith or whatever. And I said, so what do you do, Sally? And she says, oh, I'm the VP for Microsoft Marketing, East Coast. She's making $500,000 a year.
That's true.
Right? Yeah. And she says, so what do you do, Daryl? And I say, I'm a cashier at McDonald's, selling French fries and hamburgers.
Yeah, it's a tough sell.
Yeah. I'm like, making $9,000 or $10,000 a year. Where would two people that far apart come that close?
Yeah.
Music did it, Don't even know the person's name. But music drew you. So Klan people like music, white supremacists like music, Black people like music, Muslims like music, Christians like music, gay people like music, and they all are in that bar to hear music. And in that moment, they don't care, what biases or prejudices they may have, because they have that music thing in common, that they're willing to come out there and dance on the dance floor. Most of them, not all of them. But music brings you together. And then, when they get out of that zone, then they go back to their little biases. But it helps that, maybe, she had some bias or whatever, but when she leaves there, this Sally Smith person or whatever, she's got to think about that. I just danced with the black guy. It wasn't so bad. And, that's a seed planted.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. Planting those seeds and
eventually. But the thing of it is you can't just plant the seed. You must return and water it and nurture
it. You told me earlier that to remind you about the Klan member getting kicked out.
Oh yeah. Okay. So back then, the guy is dead now. He was an imperial wizard. Grand Dragon means state leader. Imperial wizard means national leader.
Well, I love these names. Grand Dragon Master.
Well, see, they come from the Scottish Rite, the Masons.
Oh.
Okay. And your original Klan members who formed the Klan, there were 6 of them who formed the Klan. They were Confederate, soldiers and stuff, and they were of Irish and Scottish descent. So they came from that Masonry thing, and they have all that, Grand Poobah this and exalted that and so forth and so on, imperial so and so. So what they did was they borrowed similar type titles and applied it to their secret organization, because the Masons are also secret. Now, that's not to say that the Masons are all in the Klan, because they're not. There are some who are, sure, but the Klan appropriates a lot of other people's cultures and things and applies it to themselves. Anyway, this imperial wizard down in Stone Mountain, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta, he owned a lot of Stone Mountain down there, and every Labor Day he would invite Klan groups from all over the country to come and be in unity, and have this gathering atop of Stone Mountain with a big cross lighting and all that kind of stuff every Labor Day. Now, back in the day, there was no such thing as, there was the Ku Klux Klan, one Klan group, and then chapters of that one Klan group all over the country. But over time, the headquarters, the lead Klan group, the main Klan group, splintered. And so now you have all these different autonomous Klan groups. There is no Klan Central. So you might have the Dixie Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, the Confederate Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, the White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, the Imperial Knights, on and on. These are all separate autonomous Ku Klux Klan groups. And they all use the same bylaws, the same secret handshake, the same colors on their robes that designate their rank, same passwords, all that kind of stuff. But they are separate. And they are rivals with each other. Everyone thinks that other Klan group is a wannabe Klan group. We are the real deal. They're a wannabe Klan group. But when you see these groups out together in public, they will hold a united front. If there's more than one Klan group from different organizations, they will hold a united front. But behind closed doors, they do not like each other. They're competition. So on this one day, they come together unified atop Stone Mountain every Labor Day. And that hasn't happened since the late 90s. Well, actually, since the early 2000s, because the guy died who was doing it. Anyway, so, if you can't bring your whole group down there or whatever, each group will send a representative to represent, their group. So this guy that we're talking about, he was chosen by the Maryland Klan group, Mr. Kelly, to go down there and to Stone Mountain and represent state of Maryland and this particular Klan group in the state of Maryland. So money, a donation thing was passed around. People put money in to pay his expenses to go down to Atlanta, fly down to Atlanta or whatever, and go to Stone Mountain. Well, and then he was supposed to come back and give a report as to what went on at this big Klan rally in Stone Mountain. Well, when he came back, he gave the report, but something didn't add up. Something didn't add up right about in what he was saying in his report. So Mr. Kelly, called down there to Stone Mountain and did some checking around with some other Klan groups, that he knew was there, and nobody saw this guy down there. He didn't do any participation. He wasn't there. Essentially, he wasn't there, and he came back and he made up a report like he'd been there. And what he had done was, he was, I knew this guy very well. He was a big wrestling fanatic, and he had taken the money that was collected for him and went to our big arena out here to see Hulk Hogan wrestle. So he never went to Georgia. So he got what they call banished from the Klan.
That's a great use of funds.
There you go.
and throughout your time from him and in the future Klan members, you started meeting more and more members and having conversations with them, and eventually having your own. We have a war on everything in this country, and now I think we're taking the right steps of a war on ignorance. This is your personal war on ignorance that you were taking with these Klan members, and that was when
now yes, it is an ignorant thing, but I want to be clear that a Klansman or Klanswoman, woman, I mean, and I've met a lot of those as well. They are not stamped out of a standard cookie cutter. They come from all different walks of life, all different educational backgrounds. Okay, you've got the third grade dropout, who doesn't know his rear end from a hole in the ground, all the way to President of the United States. President Warren G. Harding was sworn into the Ku Klux Klan in the green room of the White House. That's right, Harry Truman.
Wow.
Harry
Warren Harding?
Truman. Yep, Warren G. Harding, Warren. Warren G. Harding, Harding. Harry Truman, before he became president, had joined the Klan for a short time. He didn't like it, he got out. Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black, the Supreme Court Justice. He was in the Klan when he got the appointment to be on the Supreme Court. He had to quit the Klan to be on the Supreme Court. Senator Robert Byrd, who just died a few years ago.
Heard of him.
Yeah, he was a senator from West Virginia. He was the oldest living senator when he died. He was in the Klan in the 1940s. He was a state recruiter for the Klan in West Virginia, and he gave it up later on and began fighting for civil rights and things like that. So you have people, college graduates, people who've gone all the way to the top, president of the United States. So you have people who are pretty intelligent, but they're ignorant when it comes to that ideology, and then you have people who are just plain ignorant in terms of academics.
Did any of them ever show you anything from the Bible?
Yeah.
That they were able to reference and say?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, a lot of things in the Bible, but in reference to what I was telling you earlier, that the Bible preaches racial separation. I forgot now what chapter it is. I have to look it up for you. But the guy opened the Bible and he went through it and he found this verse.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to paraphrase it. I don't remember the exact wording, but essentially what it said was, "A lamb shall not lay with a wolf." And I said, "What does that mean?"
It's a two different species.
Exactly. He said it was two different species. I said, no, man. I said, you got that wrong. I said, we are not two different species. We are the same species, two different colors. It was, no. Blacks and whites are different species. So, like I said, they take things and they twist them to fit whatever narrative they want to promote. And look, Christians have been doing that. Catholics have been doing that. In Judaism, they do that. And in Islam, they do that. Why do we have so many different denominations of Christianity? Lutheran, Methodist, Presbyterian, Disciples of Christ, Baptist, on and on and on. They all read the same King James Bible, but they interpret it a little differently. Why do you have Orthodox Catholics, Roman Catholics, Reformed Catholics? Each one of them, they read their doctrine but interpret it a little different. In Judaism, you have the Hasidic Jews, the Orthodox Jews, the conservative Jews,
Islam
whatever. In Islam, the Sunnis, the Shiites, the ones who wear the burqa, the ones who don't wear the burqa, and they all follow the Prophet Muhammad, and they all read the Quran. So, it's left up to man to interpret.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the one thing consistent is it's just people interpreting these things, and people are flawed. So
Exactly. And this is what we have to, address. If you want to believe something, fine, you can believe it, but let's distinguish between what is fact and what is opinion. I don't want to call your opinion fiction, unless it is fiction. Like, if in your opinion 2 + 2 = 5, well, that may be your opinion, but it's also fiction. All right. but if your opinion is, Elvis Presley is a better singer than Tom Jones, then, that's an opinion. And I'm not going to call that fiction. You're entitled to believe that if you want to, or if you want to believe, that this verse means something in the Bible, then, so be it. Unless, it can be proven factually that that's not the case. And that's why we have so many different denominations of Christianity or Islam or Judaism. And like Martin Luther King said, and he put it best, he said, the most segregated time in the United States is Sunday morning between the hours of 11 a.m. and 12 noon, because everybody who works together, they all go their separate ways to their different churches.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't worship together, even though they're worshiping the same God.
That's a great. And real quick, one thing you said when you spoke to, I forgot the name, the Klansman that you met in the hotel room. What was his name?
Roger Kelly.
Roger Kelly. When you spoke to him, he said, we're two different species. And you said, no, we're different colors. I like how you didn't even say, but we're different races. Because
we're not. Because race is a man-made construct, right?
You just took it's a social, and that's something that I've been like trying to like really learn about too, because it's just people evolved to look differently based on where their climate was.
Exactly.
All it is, like, it's
and
just science. So it's like you can have an opinion, but then there's also science.
Right, exactly. And see, all it takes. Are you familiar with a book called The Bell Curve?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay, it's by Dr. Charles Murray, and I forgot the co-author's name. But anyway, it's a very racist book. Came out in the 1980s or late 80s, perhaps. Anyway, these are doctors, PhDs or whatever, scientists, and they're telling about how Black people are mentally inferior to white people, which is not true. But and it's like, well, if it's in a book, it must be true, and that was the thinking back then. Just like today is, well, I saw it on the internet, so it's got to be true, right?
Right.
And some people really think that.
There's people like will cite somebody who cites like it's like a circle of like people citing each other that hold the same ideology.
Exactly, and all you have to do, if you want to promulgate a lie and have people believe that lie, all you have to do is insert one little shred of truth into your narrative. Truth beyond any shadow of a doubt. And when you do that, people think, because they may be questionable about all the other crap that you're saying, but when you insert one little shred of truth and they recognize that it's being true, they're like, well, he didn't lie about that, so maybe he does have a point about those other things. And it throws doubt in your mind about, well, maybe he is right, and that's all it takes. And then you begin luring them in, because you've already told them the truth about one thing, and so now they begin to believe the truth about other things that are false. That's how you get somebody. That's how brainwashing starts. And so anyway, these people never read The Bell Curve, but because they knew about it and it had come out, it was a very popular book. They just took that one narrative from The Bell Curve and started fanning the book around like it was the Holy Bible.
Well, he says it in The Bell Curve.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Unbelievable. What would you say to people right now? A lot of people, I know a lot of white people in particular will say, what can we do to help or to understand because of all this unrest that's going on right now? Or just in general to anybody that to help us clear our ignorance of each other. And
we need to
whether
learn
it's police reform or I don't know.
We need to learn each other's history, because what they being the predominantly white people and even some Black people, they don't know the history. They think this George Floyd thing happened in a bubble. It was an anomaly. It wasn't. And I'm not taking anything away from George Floyd or what happened to him, but there have been hundreds of George Floyds over the decades, and we've been complaining about that over the decades. One of the problems was people back in prior to 1990, most people didn't have video cameras. They cost so much money. Only TV stations had them, and they were these big, heavy things they carried on their shoulders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Film things. Now everybody has a video camera on their cell phone. So people think, why are these incidents happening more and more? No, they're not happening more and more. It's just that you're seeing them more and more because people have access to filming them more and more. But they've been going on for decades, and we've been crying out for equality, for justice, because these things are happening to us.
Right.
And when we tell you, Officer so-and-so did this to me, you don't believe it because that's not the way the police operate. You've never seen that before. And the first thing we get is, well, what did you do? Why did he hit you with the stick? What did you do? I didn't do anything. We had to have done something to cause this cop to hit you in the head with the nightstick. No.
I answered his question.
Huh?
It could be anything. I answered his question, and he didn't like the tone.
Exactly. So, people don't want to believe it. There was no denying what happened 3 weeks ago. You watched a lynching.
That was disgusting.
It was disgusting, okay? And it was not a murder. It was a lynching, all right? You've seen pictures probably of lynch mobs standing around in the 1920s. Or you just go on Google and Google lynching 1920s or whatever. You'll see all these pictures of these people standing around pointing and smiling at some black guys hanging from a tree. It's even a family affair. Kids are even there. And they all are looking into the camera smiling. And those pictures were turned into postcards back then and mailed to other family members or friends out of state, and saying, this is how we handle our nigger problem. They were postcards. That, what you saw in that picture of those people in the 1920s or 30s, hanging people and standing around, looking into the camera, posing for pictures with the bodies, those were called lynch mobs. Some black person had been arrested, taken to jail to be held for court, and oftentimes law enforcement was in on it too. They would leave the door unlocked because they didn't want the door to be ripped off the hinges and stuff. And the lynch mob would come in before the guy had time to go to court, snatch him out of his cell, take him to a tree, and string him up. So
it's just so it's just.
Yeah, but that happened.
And it's
many
important,
times.
and it's
Right.
important to.
Yeah, and so that was a lynch mob, and then they stand around and with their faces uncovered, just because they knew they wouldn't get in trouble, and so 3 weeks ago we saw a lynch mob. We saw 4 cops. One guy with his knee on the guy's neck, the other one with his knee in his back, other one sitting on his legs, and the other one standing on the sidewalk holding the passersby, from getting too close. And they're all looking at the camera. The guy killing him was like looking right into this video camera with this girl filming it, and she was only like about 8 or 9 feet away. And he looked, he didn't even try to stop her from filming it, and he's killing somebody. And the other 3 cops standing by.
Yeah, it was like soulless in that he didn't, or like no empathy or something, and that he just didn't. And
that's no different than the 1920s or 30s, man. Those cops created a lynch mob.
I said that was even worse than you hear if somebody shoots somebody like accidentally or something,
Right.
Or you can make cases for like if somebody quick on the trigger,
right?
But that incident, 9 fucking minutes, you're just sitting there on a guy's neck. Like, how do you? What is going through your mind?
Well, you said it. There's no empathy. He did not consider that person to be a human being on his own level. It's like a cockroach. I mean, what do you do? What do you do when you see a cockroach scurrying across your floor? You go over there and stomp it. And that's what he was doing. He had no sense of humanity whatsoever. And what had the guy done? We don't even know if he was innocent or guilty. Supposedly, he was passing a fake $20 bill. Did he know?
Like, who gives? Even if he was doing like when he wasn't. Even if he was.
I mean, even if he was, you're right. It was a non-violent crime. All right. If it was a crime at all, he may not have known the 20 was fake, or even if he did, it was still non-violent.
Yeah. Now, that's insane.
Now juxtapose that with Dylan Roof. You go on YouTube and you look at Dylan Roof's arrest. You know Dylan Roof, right?
I don't. I'm sorry.
Okay, Dylan, like Bob Dylan. Dylan is his first name. Roof, like the roof above your head. He was that white supremacist who walked into the black church in South Carolina and shot and killed the 9 black people who were in there doing
Okay.
Bible study.
And that's the dude they took to like Burger King, right, or
He
something.
took him to Burger King. You know, he said, listen, when you get a call for somebody who just murdered 9 people he doesn't even know because they're black or whatever, all right? And he's armed and dangerous. And when they caught up with him, he had all kinds of weapons on him, all kinds of ammunition on him. Usually, when you find
This guy
somebody
should
like
be like
that,
put in a straitjacket or something.
exactly, you pounce on that person by surprise, slam them to the ground, bend their arms behind their back. You know, you don't handle them gently and softly. Somebody who just killed 9 people, your life is in danger if you approach somebody like that. You know, he had no problem killing 9 people. Why wouldn't he kill you too, right? You attack him by surprise, slam him down to the ground, hold him down, search him, make sure you remove everything that's of danger. You cuff him, take him to jail immediately.
He should look like Hannibal Lecter going, like,
yeah, exactly.
kill 9 people.
Exactly. And instead, you watch the arrest of him. They gently put him in the squad car, gently push his head down so he doesn't bang it on the door jamb. They put him in the squad car in the back seat. They gently pull the seatbelt across his chest, hook it in, and then what does he say? He says he's hungry. So they detour from going to the police station, the jail, and take him to Burger King, buy him a burger, and then go to jail and process him, fingerprint, photograph, etc. So here's what we see through this is our lens right here. These eyeglasses, this is our lens. What we see is, a guy in New York City who was selling loose cigarettes on the sidewalk.
Yeah, that was in Staten Island. That's my hometown.
Staten Island, okay, Eric Garner.
Yeah.
That's a nonviolent crime. Yes, he is committing a crime. He's breaking the law. Fine, arrest him, take him to jail. But instead, you slam him down on the ground, you choke him to death. He's saying, I can't breathe, and you all just choke him to death right there on camera. Your faces are exposed. Like, you're not going to get in any trouble. You're the police, or you're white, and this guy's black. Who's going to convict you? So with complete, impunity, blatant, wanton disregard for the law, they choke him to death on camera. He's saying you can't breathe, and you kill him. All right. And then you handle Dylan Roof like this, take him to Burger King. You kill George Floyd like this, So what we see through these lenses is, if you're committing a crime and you're black, you get to go to your grave. If you're white, you either go home or you go to jail. Either way, you live. That's what we're seeing. So we need to take these lenses off and lend them to these people so they can see the same thing we're seeing. And those white people that I mentioned, like I said, today we have a lot more white people who are joining in our marches. We've always had white people since Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King who have supported our civil rights. But today there is a mass of white people who are joining in because they're seeing what we've been complaining about all these years. And when we were complaining by ourselves or with just a few white people were like this. They didn't want to hear what we had to say. They should shut us down. All right. Now you got all these other white people joining in who look like the people who need to hear this. So now they're beginning to listen with this collective voice thing of all these different ethnicities and colors of skin. And now they begin to listen. They begin to act a lot quicker. People are getting fired a lot faster. They're getting charged a lot faster. In the past, it would take weeks, maybe even months, for an officer to accrue those kinds of charges.
Yeah, there was a video of George Floyd's daughter. I think she was on the shoulders of Steven Jackson.
Okay.
He was a basketball player.
Yeah.
And they were recording her, and she was saying, "My daddy changed the world."
He did.
Because the way these firings are happening.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first time, I think, too, because the police who usually rank and file support each other no matter what,
right.
For some reason.
Right.
But now cops are trying to, and every city's different. Everywhere's going to be a little bit different.
Sure. Absolutely.
But there's a lot of cases where they're marching, taking a knee with people.
Right.
Firings are happening.
And here's what has to happen, okay? What, and I'm just, giving you my opinion,
Yes, sir.
right? But first I want to address some of these protests. There are a lot of people who join in with these protests, black and white, who are not there for the cause.
Right, and that's
They are there
too.
as agent provocateurs,
Yes,
or there to instigate, to fight the government, to go out and loot and benefit themselves.
They're using this incident as a way to like divert that energy.
Precisely,
Right.
precisely. And now I don't go for any of that looting stuff at all. I don't care who it is, black, white, otherwise. I don't advocate and I don't justify setting the buildings on fire, but I do understand it. And
I think you have to. You
have to, and you do have to understand it. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them for those fires. But I would not do that. I would not advocate that they do that. But I understand the reason why. And there are several reasons, but let me just give you one of the main ones. If you're driving down the street speeding, let's say you're doing 55 miles an hour in 25 zone, or you run a red light. Either way, the cop sees you, pulls you over. What does he do? He gives you a ticket, right? If you don't pay your credit card bill on time, you get imposed a late fee. If you do something to somebody to injure them or whatever, they take you to court and sue you. In all three of these examples, money is attached. The speeding ticket costs money. The not paying your bill on time costs money, extra money. Being sued for punching somebody in the face, and the judge rules against you, you got to pay this guy $25,000. That's money out of your pocket. And why are all these things assessed money? The reason being is because it's to teach you a lesson. It's to deter you.
Deterrent.
Yeah, exactly. A deterrent from your performing that behavior again, right? So, when you get separated from your money, chances are you're not going to speed down that street again, or you're going to pay your card on time, or you're not going to, do something that's going to cause somebody to sue you anymore. Nobody likes getting hit in the wallet and having their money separated from them. All right. So for all these decades where we have been complaining about, what's happening to us, to the police who don't do anything, we go to court. The court finds us guilty, even though we weren't, or dismisses the case, does not convict the people who've done this. Time after time after time after time after time, they're like this, okay? So how do you get their attention? You cost them money, the same way they cost us money. So they go and they burn out the city because those buildings cost millions and millions and millions of dollars. And so now, you got somebody's attention because the city's got to pay that money. Also, the insurance companies will come on board because insurance companies do not like to pay you. They like to collect from you. They want you to pay your premium every period, right? But when you get into an accident, they don't want to cover you. They want to make some excuse as to why you don't deserve X amount of dollars to replace your car. Your car got totaled, but they only want to give you $20 for it or something, instead of the real value of it. They don't want to be separate from their money either. But now these buildings are insured by insurance companies and they got to pay out this money. So the insurance companies come on board and start telling the cops, hey, you all got to stop doing this. You're costing us money. You're costing the city money. You're costing insurance companies money. So now you've got the attention of the people who need to listen. And that's why they're acting so fast. All right. So those fires do have a purpose. And it's a shame that that's what people have to resort to in order to make somebody listen to them. I mean, fire can be a good thing. I can take fire and I can heat your house, or I can take fire and I can burn it down. But fire will make people listen. So that's what's happening there. So now, what has to happen with the police? Several things have to happen. The defunding. And what does defunding mean? It means a lot of different things, but predominantly it doesn't mean taking people's pay away. They will still get paid the same amount of money that they earn in their salary, but they won't have the extra money to put on police barbecues or perhaps buy new squad cars or
Gear.
yeah, whatever, that they have the, every time the budget is set, you take into consideration the payroll, and then you allocate more funds for extemporaneous things, or those extra amenities. That money is being reallocated somewhere else. Some towns want to allocate it towards mental health, because a lot of mental health people are being arrested for loitering, hanging out at 7-Eleven, or being on the street and getting arrested. So fix that, you'll stop the arrests. Well, that will not stop racism. And yes, more money should be allocated towards mental health, but I think it should come from other sources. The money that comes from defunding, the police need to be defunded to a certain degree and also reformed. All right. This training business, say, oh, they need more training. No, they don't need more training. All right. What are you trained to choke Black people and shoot Black people? Is that the training you're talking about? You weren't trained to put your knee on that white guy's neck. You weren't trained to shoot some white guy holding a cell phone 40 times. So what kind of training are you talking about? They all are trained the same way. All right. So, but the tragedies are happening to a particular group of people, minorities, either Hispanic or Black or whatever minority it is. So it's not training. All right. We need to have money, to reform these people. When police apply for a job, they have to take a test, oral, written, and polygraph. Now here, where I live in my county, one of the questions on the test is about homosexuality. Okay, I get it. If you have a bias against homosexuals, how are you going to deal with somebody like that? If you're not, cool with that or whatever, then you're not qualified to be on the street, because you may have an incident with somebody who's gay, and are you going to have some kind of bias against this person? They take polygraph tests to find out if they have an alcohol problem. Have they ever done cocaine? Things like this. So why not have a question about racial bias? Those are not on the test.
I'm surprised they're not.
Well, that's why they need to start being on the test.
How is that not on the? How has that not been on the
exactly? Well, you know why? Because probably half the police force wouldn't make it. They wouldn't pass. Okay, so you need police officers. So they skip over that question.
You could always lie on a written thing, but if you extend a polygraph.
Well, see, that's why I'm saying, if you defund the police, take some of that money and put it towards behavioral psychologists. They can tell who has racial bias.
That's probably the most important trait of a police officer, is how they're going to behave in situations.
Right. And, like the FBI,
I don't know. I should just clarify. Like, I don't know.
They have criminal profilers who have studied serial killers, serial rapists, certain kinds of criminals, and they have profiles of what these people, and they're generally pretty accurate. Not always. Every now and then they screw up, and somebody who doesn't fit the profile does something crazy or something. But for the most part, they have fairly accurate profiles of certain types of crime, and that's because these psychologists look at these people like the Hannibal Lecters and figure out their mindset and all that kind of stuff that you mentioned earlier. So why don't you pay a set of behavioral psychologists who specialize in race and racial incidents, anti-Semitism, racism, things, and phobias, and get them to design the tests and be present when these officers are being questioned. Is there some little twitch that they do when they're lying about race, or whatever it is? They can figure it out.
Yeah, maybe have them do like a ride along when these guys are first on the job.
They can do that. There are a lot of different things that they can do that they're not doing. Another thing they need is this. In the rare occasion, because it's very hard to get a police officer charged with anything. It's even harder to get that officer convicted, because their unions are very, very strong.
Right, of course, yeah.
Okay, so and when they get fired from in the rare occasions when they get fired, what do? They go to another police department and get rehired. They can't get rehired where they got fired from, but they can go to the next town, the next county, or out of state
Yeah, that's
and get another police job because that's all they know how to do, and that's what they want to do. And so they just keep going from station to station, screwing up, because their behavior has not been corrected. They just take it to another place and continue it. It's the same thing like with these Catholic priests who get in trouble with the little boys. What do?
They move around.
They just move them around. They don't punish them. You just take them out of that church, put them in another church, and then you find out they're doing the same thing. So they take them out of there, put them over there, and then 40 years later, the kid is now an adult, and he's testifying against that person. And then finally, there's maybe justice 40 years later if father so and so is still alive. Sometimes they die in the interim,
Yep.
but that kid's life is messed up even through adulthood because of what this guy did, and they just move him around. Okay, the police and the church don't have a public national registry for these kinds of people. All right, now sex offenders, child abusers, they go. Yeah, they do. Okay, so if you did something to some kid in New York City, and you got arrested for it or whatever, convicted of it, and you go out to Los Angeles, your name is still on the national registry. So it's when you go to try to get a job at some kindergarten or Boy Scout troop or whatever, they look on the national. Oh no, this guy, he's on here. No, we're not going to hire him. Right? The police need a national registry also. So these cops who are bad cops cannot get a job at another department anywhere in this country if they're on that register. And the second thing I think that they need is some kind of anonymous tip line for cops, just like you and I have. If the cops are trying to investigate some crime, and they're not getting any information, they put out an ad on TV or posters saying, hey, if you have any information, call this number, leave us information. You can do it anonymously. You'll get a reward or whatever. So you don't even have to give your name, because what happens is you give your name, somebody knows you snitched on them, you might suffer some retaliation or some repercussions from that. So they make it anonymous to protect the citizen who will come, whistleblower protection, right? Essentially. The cops need that also, because they have that blue code of silence where they don't tell on each other.
That's a good.
Okay, and see, there are three categories of police. We only talk about two categories, but I say there are three. All right, everybody talks about good cops and bad cops, and then in the rare occasion when a cop gets busted, the public information officer from the police department or the chief will come on TV and say, well, in a department this large, you're bound to have a few bad apples. No, there are more bad apples than there are good cops. And I'll prove it to you, all right? We all know what bad cops do. A good cop will not do those things, but the good cop will not tell on the bad cop. He'll turn a blind eye. He will not go tell on the bad cop because they don't like snitches, all right? And if he does, he will incur, his life can be put in danger from his fellow officers because of that blue code of silence. All right, he might go out on a call and there's a shootout. So what does he do? He calls for backup, and that transmission goes over the air to other police. And they, that's Officer so and so. He's a snitch. I'm not going to go help him up. Yeah, he's a snitch. I'm not going to go help him. So either they don't go to his aid or they come very slowly, and in doing so, they are jeopardizing their fellow officer's life, all because he snitched on them. You understand? You ever see a movie called Serpico?
I've heard of it.
Okay, write it down. Serpico.
I'm not good. I'm like the worst with movies.
Yeah, it's a true story about Frank Serpico, NYPD officer who was an honest cop. All right, and as a result, his own fellow officers tried to kill him because he told on them. So a good cop will not do what the bad cops do. The third category is the honest cop, and that's a minority, very, very, very small in numbers, because they will tell what the bad cops do. So therefore, they jeopardize their own safety. And so we need that mechanism that allows the good cops to report anonymously to an outside body, not report to their superiors.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because that's
sticky.
Yeah, it's very sticky. All right, the cops investigating the cops, the Office of Internal Affairs. You need an unbiased investigation, just like in a jury. If a doctor is on trial, the prosecutors, ask the jury, is anybody in the jury a doctor? Oh, you're excused. Are you married to a doctor? Is your kid a doctor? Is your mother a doctor? Or do you work in the healthcare system? You're excused. Bring in somebody else. So that way you have a complete unbiased jury, because a doctor is not going to convict another doctor. That kind of thing. There's that bond. So you need an unbiased jury. So how can you have police investigating police? That's not unbiased. So, but yeah, that's what they do, and that's because of this union thing. So anyway, you need a mechanism where you have an outside body that investigates, an outside entity that investigates, police misconduct, and these cops can call this body, anonymously or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and say, Officer so and so is taking bribes, or is using excessive force, or is soliciting women for sex in exchange for not giving them a speeding ticket, or whatever he's doing. And that way, you're cleaning out those bad apples. Because if there were only a few bad apples in a department, and you got all these good cops, don't you think all those good cops could get rid of a few bad apples?
Yeah, then this snitching wouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah, well, if you have a basketball team or a football team, and one guy on the team is not pulling his weight, they all get together and say, hey, coach, this guy needs to be benched. We need somebody else on this field or on this basketball court with us, because he's screwing us up. No good cops want one or two bad apples tarnishing their badge. Because when George Floyd when Derek Chauvin did what he did to George Floyd, guess what? It tarnished the entire Minneapolis Police Department. Is every cop on that department just like Derek Chauvin? No, I wouldn't think so. But if there's so many good cops on there, why didn't they get rid of Derek Chauvin to begin with?
But those are four. The fact that there was four of them there.
Exactly. There's more than a few
Weird.
bad apples, understand?
Yeah.
And there are more that you didn't see. There were only 4 on that scene. And this guy had 19 years on that police
He
department.
had like 12 complaints or something.
No, he had 18 complaints. 18 complaints in 19 years. Now listen,
It's enough.
when you become a police officer, you are given a 007 license, a license to kill. All right, you have the right to use deadly force if needed. When you get that done, you're giving a license to kill, and therefore you should have higher accountability and responsibility than somebody like you and I. We're not just.
What I was thinking too, what I thought was weird. He's got 19 years in. If you're 19 years in that profession, you shouldn't even be in the position of being hands-on arresting somebody like that.
You should be up in the brass or something like that. But he probably preferred doing that because he enjoyed that.
Because he got
to get his adrenaline kick or whatever.
Ugh.
But listen, hear this out. If you're a doctor working in a hospital, you have to be licensed to be a doctor, right? Of course. So if you're hired by a hospital to be a doctor there, do you think that hospital would still employ you if you had 19 complaints of malpractice? That hospital would be getting sued. They'd be like, you got to go.
You'd be doing,
we can't have you on staff here.
Medicine
right?
you'd be practicing. But...
The AMA, American Medical Association, will pull this guy's license.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You drive a car or some vehicle. Can you imagine you being allowed to drive around wherever you are with 18 DWIs on your license?
Yeah.
Yeah, you get 2 DWIs, your license is revoked, gone. You're not driving anymore. You're walking or taking the bus.
You get points if you have like 3 or 4 infractions.
Yeah, you get suspended, and then you get revoked.
Yeah.
Right. This guy had 18. So what that tells you is this: 18 people, 18 individuals cried out for help and said, there's something wrong with this officer. Not one of those 18 voices was listened to. If perhaps the authorities, his supervisors, the brass or whatever, had listened to just one of those 18 complaints and took action to correct his behavior or pulled him out of that job, George Floyd would still be alive. 18 complaints, and nobody listened, and now half the country is burning down, and he was still on the force after all of that. And now, do you think that other cops didn't know what he was doing? And there were probably some who wanted him off the force, who wanted to tell the brass,
Couldn't.
But they couldn't because it would leak out, and then they'd be in trouble. Because what you got to understand is, when you go to the brass, the ones who've been promoted up to the top, they're no longer in the street patrol, and you make a complaint against one of your fellow officers, which is breaking the code of blue, it's very hard for those people up there to convict the guy down on the street, because 20 years ago, when they were on the street, they were doing the exact same thing. So why would I bust Officer Friendly for beating some guy in the head with his nightstick, when I was doing it 20 years ago? That's why you need that outside body.
100%. That's a great.
So if you're gonna defund the police, pay them their salaries. Don't underpay them, but take the extra money and put it towards a national registry. Put it towards hiring some outside body to investigate egregious complaints against the police. If it's just some minor thing, let them handle it, whatever. But shootings, bad shootings, things like this, taking bribes, excessive force, it goes to this outside body that has no connection to the police.
Hospitals have something called the Joint Commission that goes around and certifies them. It's like
right. Yeah, police have that also. It's called CALEA, Commission on Accreditation Law Enforcement Agency.
I guess the concept would be something like that, but to look at the behavioral side of things.
Yeah, I mean, and it costs money. So if you're going to defund it, put it towards that, and then you have defunding, and then you have reforming. So you reform how you hire police officers. Put that other stuff on the test. Racial bias and things like that. Create a national registry. So if somebody does do something stupid, they will be prevented from getting another job. Just like a sex offender can't get another job somewhere. So why should somebody who goes around killing somebody be able to go get another job?
All stuff that should have been done a long time ago, it sounds like.
Well, but see, here's the good thing. This is as bitter as it is, and Tony, it may get worse before it gets better. But I'm telling you, this is the best thing that has happened in the 21st century. Not George Floyd losing his life, but white people and black people coming together for the same cause is causing that page to turn a little bit faster.
Yeah, and I think it's all in steps too. And once you fight a little ignorance, you fight a little bit more ignorance, and you fight a little bit, and then you could start talking about things like we're fucking remade up races to begin with. Shut the fuck. Like, what are you?
Yeah.
It's like, this is a solar panel for vitamin D. So that's all I have here. It's like, let's be serious now. This is the stuff that just just frustrating.
It is. But young people are taking to the streets. Now, did you see the cops in Buffalo, New York, shove that old man?
Yep.
Okay, so let's go through that. All right, this old man, 75 years old, he was white. Doesn't matter what color he was, but he was white. He walked up to the cops to talk to them, and two of them shove him. And he falls backward on the ground, bangs his head. He's unconscious on the sidewalk. Blood is pouring from his head. All right, and you saw them all walk by.
It's very
and
weird.
you look over, one guy walked over and he was going to bend over. You saw him try to bend over, and the other cops pushed him along, the police.
Yes.
That was because he was about to break the blue code of silence.
Right. That's a
they moved.
That
You
ties into
saw
everything you just said.
You saw it with your own eyes. His humanity was about to come out. No, keep on going. Go.
No, we don't do that.
We don't do that. Okay. Now look, they take an oath to serve and protect. Why weren't they serving and protecting that man?
Yeah, and that's something that gets lost too. It's civil service. It's service.
But you see, something is left off.
It's power.
See, it should be. Every police officer's motto, from New York to Los Angeles to Florida to wherever, right? To serve and protect. But see, that's an empty statement, because it doesn't say to serve and protect who. It should say to serve and protect the community in which we work, right? But when you leave it open like that, to serve and protect, I read it as to serve and protect each other.
I mean,
instead of the community in which you serve.
I mean, we've pointed out earlier that there's a problem when you leave things up to interpretation already.
Yeah, exactly. So you saw the blue code of silence in operation when that guy broke rank and went over to look to see if this guy was okay. His fellow cop moved him along. That's the blue code of silence right there in action. And what did they say? What did they say to their supervisors? That he tripped and stumbled.
Oh yeah.
So they lied. They lied until somebody produced that video, and that's why they got suspended, because they lied. So that's what they do.
Didn't that hold, like, there's 56 of them all resigned or something?
Yeah, from the special forces or whatever that they have in that department. 57 of them stepped down. That's crazy. Okay, now, are you going to tell me that out of all those cops there, the 57, 58, whatever they were, that there is a good cop there somewhere. Somewhere.
Yeah,
okay, but why wouldn't that good cop go against the ranks?
It's the culture.
The culture. It's that blue code of silence culture where we don't snitch on one another. And when one of our officers screws up and uses excessive force, which was what you saw, the guy shoved the guy banged his head on the ground, knocked out. That's excessive force right there. We lie about it. We say, oh, he stumbled and fell. It's the same way some black guy gets hit in the head with a nightstick, and it's not caught on camera. Well, he was resisting arrest. Maybe he wasn't resisting arrest. Right across the street is a police station, a precinct from my house. And back in the 90s, you know what they did? They got in trouble for it because it became known, because it was happening at other stations, and people were saying, hey, this has got to stop. They were bringing black people into the police station and beating confessions out of them. They thought they were drug dealing, whether they were or not. They were innocent people too. They take a county yellow pages, the phone book, and put it on top of their head, and then take their nightstick and bam, hit down on the yellow pages. And what it would do would be, it would give the guy a concussion, but it would not leave a scar, because you got that buffer there.
That's sadistic.
So yeah. So now you go and complain about police brutality. They beat you with a nightstick. Well, where's the scar? Well, there is no scar because there was yellow pages there. You understand? But you still have the concussion in your head. So that's how they got around it. But then what happened was, there were complaints in other precincts of the same thing by people who didn't even know each other. So then it was found out, oh, this is really going on. We need to stop this. So, this, again, I'm not downing the police as a whole, but something has to be reformed. Something has to change. And I went to school with people who've become police officers. And I can tell you something right now. The kids that I went to school with back when we were kids, if they were good kids in school, they're goody two-shoes, they're compassionate, they're like everybody, and they're on the force today, they're the same way. They're good cops. They're out there doing what's supposed to be done, helping people out, et cetera, et cetera. If they were bullies at my school, always on a power trip or whatever, they're just being bullied, just bullying people in school, and today they're on the force, they're bullies with badges. They haven't changed their personality. Simple as that.
Yeah, that's part of it. I know a lot of kids I went to high school with that became cops. I'm like, oh, he's a cop. I could see that. That'd be good. then some people I'm like,
Mm.
yikes. And I even like being in New York and whatever, and when I was like 18, 19, I used to walk around with like a tank top, and I was, well, better built than I am now, like more filled out.
You and me both, man.
And if I had, sometimes I wear a bandana or something,
Yeah, you're suspicious.
and cops would come. Remember they came up to me? I was parked at that side of my house. I was living with my dad still. I was parked. I was running inside to get something, and I run back to my car. Undercover cops come up with flashlights, just start pointing in the car, and I'm like, "Excuse me, do you have a badge?" And
Yeah,
they're like, "Right here." And they just show me the walkie-talkie. It says
yeah,
property of NYPD, and I'm like, "That's not a badge."
right. Yeah, they don't want you reporting them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so strange, and then imagine that, and that's from my perspective. I know cops could be like. I remember one time I was walking down the block in a hoodie. They just pulled over and they just started like questioning me in like some neighborhood. I was walking from my mom's house to take the bus to my dad's house. I was like, "What the fuck are you just doing?" And that's me. And I could imagine somebody, you know, black people that have to go through this on a different. And that's me and my little bubble with these couple of cops and just because I'm dressed differently.
Yeah.
So people when they see things that they're
One's
not
per-
trusting.
one's perception is one's reality. Well, listen, man, I really enjoyed talking to you,
Yeah, I'm
man.
sorry.
No worries, no worries about it at all, man. You know, if you want to do a part 2 sometime, just let Leah know, whatever, and we'll do it.
Yeah, no, this was great. Thank you so much. I can't wait to push. If real quick, if people want to follow you or
Yeah, they can go to DarylDavis.com, DARYL, 1R, DarylDavis.com.
perfect. All right,
All
sir.
right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You take care, man. Stay in touch.
Yes, sir.
Bye-bye.